last speaker comes from Colombia, like QMC. Dr. Adriana Montealegre is pediatrician and neonatologist at San Ignacio University Hospital and associate professor at the Javeriana University in Bogotá. She's epidemiologist of the Kangaroo Foundation and PhD candidate in clinical epidemiology. Today, she's going to share with us a successful Colombian experience against COVID pandemic. Please welcome, doctor.
Thank you. Buenas tardes. Thank you for inviting me to share our experience in face of COVID-19 pandemic and why we qualify our experience as successful. Well, our beginning was as yours. On March 8, 2020, appeared the first confirmed case in our country in a woman who came from Italy. Shortly after, on March 17, 2020, our government declared the mandatory quarantine. At this time, like all medical teams in the world, Colombian neonatologists and pediatricians had a big uncertainty about the pathophysiology of this disease and its effects in pregnant women and newborns. So we began to work in strategies to solve different problems. I would emphasize that we had the experience from Asia and Europe, and it was an advantage. So we had these challenges. First, the lack of knowledge of the mechanisms of mother-child transmission and sequelae in the fetus. Also, the lack of knowledge concerning clinical signs and symptoms in newborn. The fear of infection for all people. And also, as a consequence, the difficulty in continuing with humanized delivery, visits 24 hours, and in-hospital kangaroo mother care. So, our strategies were to review of the best, the available evidence. Most of this evidence was case series, to create guidelines in face of this evidence led from medical associations like the Kangaroo Foundation, Colombian Neonatologist Association, and finally from the Ministry of Health. We worked in guarantee personal protection equipment for parents and for the health team, a reinforcement in hand washing because our resources were low. These are the tables with available evidence that we collected, and also the Neonatologists Association and Ministry of Health guidelines. Finally, in May 2020, a WhatsApp group was created to facilitate communication between these organizations in order to produce these guidelines. In June, the Ministry of Health produced the resolution, the national resolution with the guidelines. So one of our major concerns was the separation between mother and baby. We should have serious implications for breastfeeding and for bonding. So we adapted in my hospital and in other hospitals, each health team of neonatal care units adapted the guidelines in the newborn unit, in particular for my hospital, the San Ignacio University Hospital. So in the case of asymptomatic mothers with uncomplicated disease, based on the available evidence, we left the mothers in isolation with their babies in hospital rooms, with a separation of 2 meters, mask, hand washing for mothers, allowing breastfeeding and avoiding the separation of the mother and the baby. In the case of mothers and or newborn with symptoms of infection, we hospitalized the baby in the neonatal care unit and did isolation cohorts. If only the mother was symptomatic, another infection-free family member assumed caregiver status. We tried to avoid closing NICU to parents. We tried our best, and if possible, to promote breastfeeding. And also, if mothers are positive, we have video calls for PCR positive mothers. We have the help of fathers or for grandmothers. Grandmothers less than 60 years old. Training, in hospital training, continued and was focused in breastfeeding, kangaroo position, hands washing, and drops and contact protection measures. So, we had an important group activities in our NICU, workshops for parents, for grandparents and siblings, and we had to stop these activities. Now, we are returning to these activities. So, in October 2020, the Kangaroo Foundation conducted a survey in 83 neonatal units in Colombia. As you can see, as expected, parents had less time for visits, 84 of them. Most NICUs had an isolation area, but less than 50% of the hospital had mother-child rooms available for isolation. In most of the NICUs, visits were 6 hours or less per day. And now, this is the summary of infected mothers and newborns in Colombia until October 2020. Most of mothers recovered, 2022. Most of mothers recovered, 246 died. And for newborns, most cases occurred after 7 days of life and recovered. Only 9 babies died. In our hospital, there was a slight decrease in hospital stay and general infection rate. Breastfeeding support remained the same. And I would thanks Kangaroo Foundation, the support from Kangaroo Foundation, because we had early discharge, home discharge. And I think that it was the key. The mean hospital stay in 2019 was 9.2 days, and in 2020, 8.5 days for the early discharge, home discharge. General infection rate was 2.5 per 100 discharges, and in 2020, general infections rate was 1.5 per 100 discharges. And the breastfeeding support was 95.1 in 2019, and in 2020, 96.3. Okay, this is the hospital stay, the statistics from Kangaroo Foundation. And the overall statistics is from Bogota and Medellin, and showed a reduction of 2 days in hospital stay. This was for the early home discharge to the ambulatory kangaroo mother care programs. We have joined the in-hospital training in kangaroo mother care with kangaroo mother care programs. The second and important part of our kangaroo mother care, national kangaroo mother care. The breastfeeding support at the units in Medellin and Bogota continued, as you can see. And probably because of home isolation measures for the entire population, the frequency of readmissions decreased, as you can see. 2090, 2.7%, and 2020, 1.5%, up to 40 weeks gestational age. And between 40 weeks and 12 months corrected age, in 2019, we have 3.4% of readmissions. So it was really important. We found an increase in exclusive breastfeeding at 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months of age, of corrected age. Maybe because mothers spend more time with their babies because of isolation and early home discharge in kangaroo position. So early home discharge is complemented by close follow-up in ambulatory KMC programs until 40 weeks gestational age. This follow-up is multidisciplinary and mandatory face-to-face, no matter if it was the COVID-19. So you can see nurse, pediatrician, psychologist, social worker work in these ambulatory KMC programs. On admission, what was the problem? We took measures to reduce the risk of infection, such as restricting only one family member per patient. Ideally, the mother or the father, obligatory use also of a mask, hand washing, and temperature measure. In individual cases, when adequate evolution until 40 weeks gestational age was verified, face-to-face consultation were shipped and virtual consultations were carried out. We focused on maintaining social distance, as you can see in the waiting and consultation area, and also promoting hand washing and the use of general protective measures. Of course, we had very resourceful Latin American mothers, strong mothers, who made supervised protective elements for themselves and their babies. Supervised. This mask was supervised. For the second follow-up phase, face-to-face visits were prioritized for the most at-risk children, like children with congenital heart diseases, neurological problems, or if the pediatrician detected failure to thrive. And for the other children, virtual and face-to-face visits were shipped. So finally, strict and frequent protocols were followed for surface disinfection in the ambulatory kangaroo mother care programs, and we emphasize hand sanitization for mothers, fathers, and also the antiseptic solution. Finally, these strategies allowed us to continue the benefits of the kangaroo mother care method and the follow-up of these vulnerable children, and taught us how to adapt to the changes based on the best available evidence. These are strategies with big implications in our hands and are in our hands. No fear of infections, but providing the best available evidence to care of our babies. Thank you so much.